Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. Can everybody hear me in the back? Yeah, perfect. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Mayoral Forum hosted by the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce. I'm Nyla Frank-Rogers, and I'm the Executive Director of the Chamber, and I'm delighted to see so many of you here in person, but also online on the live stream. Before we begin, I do want to acknowledge that we are on Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. A special welcome to our mayoral candidates, and thank you for being here to share your vision for our community. This forum is important opportunity for residents and businesses leaders to engage directly with those who may soon be leading our town. The Chamber plays a vital role in connecting local businesses, government, and the community. And for those unfamiliar with our work, we support a thriving business environment, advocate for policies that for economic growth, and provide opportunities for civil engagement, like tonight's event. We believe that informed voters are key to building a strong, vibrant community, and that's why we've organized this forum. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank our incredible sponsor, the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors, our chamber champion supporters, Michelin, Eden Valley Poultry, the Ritzy team, Scotia Wealth Management, Wines of Nova Scotia, and Atlantic Poultry. A big thank you to Blue Cow Marketing, so Sean there in the back, for recording and live streaming tonight's event, and the Kentville Fire Hall for hosting us here tonight. Your support it makes nights like this possible, and we deeply appreciate your partnership. Lastly, I'm honored to introduce tonight's moderator, Raj Nayak. Last Wolfle Forum, I joked that it was his first time hosting a chamber event for us, so go easy on him. He only messed up the order, I think, one time. So we'll keep him on his toes. So he's going to guide us for an engaging discussion, a fair discussion. So this isn't a debate. Everyone's going to have an equal opportunity to answer the questions on key issues that are affecting our community. So thank you all for being here tonight, and we look forward to an insightful and informative evening. So Raj, you can take it away.
Thank you, Nyla. Welcome, everyone. And like Nyla suggested, my name is Raj Naik. I'm one of the board members, board of directors at the Chamber of Commerce in the Valley. And I think there were mixed reviews about my first moderation. So it was not all bad, right? So I'd like to thank the candidates for participating and looking forward to your insights and the conversation we are going to have tonight. We will let the candidates introduce themselves in a minute, but we are pleased to welcome your Town of Kentville mayoral candidates, Andrew Zabian, Brent Platt, and Paula Huntley. Earlier, we drew for speaking order. Speaking first will be Paula, followed by Andrew, and later by Brent. I just want to go over a few rules for the event format. For opening statements, each candidate will have 3 minutes to offer introductory comments, followed by host questions, one business-related question from the Chamber, and one housing-related question from the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors. And then we will move on to the submitted questions that have been submitted by the public, either online or at the door. We will not be able to get to all questions. We may not be able to get through all the questions, but there are a lot of similar questions which we have grouped together. We are hoping that at least common themes will be addressed. All candidates will have equal opportunity to respond to all questions with 2 minutes per question. Closing statements at approximately 8:10 p.m. I will provide the candidates 3 minutes to offer closing comments in reverse orders of their opening comments. For audience participation, audience members must remain respectful and avoid disruptive behavior. Violations will result in removal from the event. There are to be no cameras, video, or audio taping except by the Chamber. The event will be recorded and broadcast publicly on the Chamber's YouTube channel and saved with captions for continued viewing. Campaign literature, there are to be no signs and no posters present in the hall. Pamphlets may be handed out after the forum. I ask all candidates to respect the timer so everyone gets an equal amount of time. I will interrupt if you're going over time and ask you to wrap it up. So let's get started with the introductions. Up first is Paula with 3 minutes.
Thank you, Raj. I am Paula Huntley, and I've been a resident of Kentville for over 20 years. I see you, and I hear you. Our town faces many challenges. Among them are infrastructure needs, sustainable development growth, and access to quality services like transportation. I see these challenges as opportunities to bring innovative solutions, create sustainable growth, and ensure that every resident, no matter their background, has a chance to succeed. These challenges are top of mind and include stormwater management, old and new developments, and ways forward in improving the way we plan and how we communicate respectively. Going forward, it's time to listen to all voices, whether it's small businesses trying to navigate regulations, looking after our seniors, our youth seeking a future they can be proud of. What sets me apart is not just my experience, but my hands-on approach. I've spent my career in management and working side by side with community leaders on local issues. My takeaways: always prioritize people. Be rooted in the values of our community, and be a unifying force to solve the critical issues we face together. We have the talent, the drive, and the heart here in Kentville. So let's get to work and let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew?
Thank you. So most of you know me, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Andrew Zabian, and I grew up in Hants Border. My parents, Mike and Mary Zabian, had stores all through the valley for decades. And I was that little kid in Towers Mall. I don't want to say how long ago, running underneath the racks. And now my kids do it at Finney's downtown Kentville. So when I was young, I followed in their footsteps. They taught me how to run good business, and just, I learned how to work hard. So it was natural for me to want to do the same thing. And I opened a New Minas back in the 90s, mid 90s. And I was in a shopping mall at that time because I thought you had to be in a mall to have a business. I hadn't imagined being 5 minutes from Kentville and not really coming here often. So I did that for a long time. And then 12 years ago, the opportunity fell into my lap to buy Finney's. And my wife, she said, you got to buy this business and we'll move to Kentville. We'll reopen the store in Kentville. And I said, I'm not going to go to Kentville. Who goes to Kentville? And I listened to her, which I usually do. And we bought the building, we reopened, and we had a great first day. I felt at home here. Imagine only being here for a day and feeling at home in this town. And that night I went home and I said, Mary, we're going to move here now. We're going to buy a house and move here. So we did. We then had 4 kids here. Dahlia's 11, Nadia's 9, Raheem's 7, and Amir's going to be 6 soon. And we've had a lot of fun with, expanding the business, and just watching businesses come into this town is an amazing place to be. So 4 years ago, I decided I was going to run for council. And for a little bit there, I thought, you know what, I'm going to run for mayor. I kind of thought I wanted to do that. Then I thought about a minute later, and I thought, you know what, it's better to learn the ropes first, get the experience, and then come back in, because it's a huge learning curve for anybody. And I think anyone who's been on council or is on council now will tell you it's not something you just jump into. So I've done that for the last 4 years. I know where we need to go now. I've identified and I've learned, and I'm ready to move this place forward with a new council, and I'm looking for your support. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Brent?
Thanks. My name is Brent, and before I start, thank you to the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors for hosting tonight's forum. Civic engagement's important, and I've discovered over the last 3 weeks that I cannot sleep and continue smiling every day when I knock and meet people's doors. I've reintroduced myself to Facebook and have heard from lots and lots of different people, some here in Kentville and some not. And it's been some really interesting conversations. I spent a lot of time thinking and trying to see if I could find somebody who would be interested to run in this election. And I wasn't overly successful. And I sat down with my wife and we had the long, tough conversation of putting ourselves forward, because anybody who's run for office knows that it's a family affair. It doesn't stop. Now, when I go for walks in the morning, I get to talk to people who tell me their hopes and dreams and some of their challenges they have here in Kentville. And we've lived here for 5 years and we love this place. We live on West Main. I get to see a lot of interesting people. I've been a member of the fire department for the last 4 years. And that means I get to see people often on their worst days, but I still see the hope. And I've seen the hope in the last couple of months where our council has had some challenges. And I think our current sitting council has done the best that they can. I think there's been a lot of challenges that have been put in front of them. And I feel that we as a citizens group need to have a little more vision. I think we need a plan to move forward. And the analogy that seems to work the most is you don't go on a road trip without knowing the destination. So I'm hoping to help point out that destination with all of you. What I've heard when I meet people at the door or out wandering is they want a town that they can see themselves in. They can see themselves living for a longer period of time, a town that understands that infrastructure is more than just crisis. It's more than just failing infrastructure. It's building sustainable infrastructure, not just for today, but also for the future. And I see myself being able to do that. That's been my professional career. I've got an MBA with a specialization in statistical inference, which means I'm kind of a numbers geek. So data helps. And it's important in a town of 7,200 people with the aspirations to be a town of 10,000 people to really know what you need. And I've led big organizations through change. Change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes engagement. And I'm committed to make sure that if I'm the successful candidate in this election, that I make time and space to listen to you. And not just to placate you, but to also make sure that I hear you, that we find some way to be accountable, that we find a way to make sure we can communicate our dreams and hopes with everybody here. So thanks for coming today. To all of you on the internet, thanks for tuning in. Thanks.
Thank you, Brent. And now we will jump into the host questions. And the first one is from the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors. Housing attainability is top of mind for Nova Scotians. Everyone deserves a place to call home, whether that's through renting, co-op, home ownership, or other models. Now, what innovative housing ideas will you implement if elected to council? And we'll start with Andrew.
With me? Okay, thank you. When I look at housing, really housing has always been a provincial mandate. And I struggle with this a little bit because they kind of push the buck over to us, right? And our tax dollars are supposed to be used for the roads and the sewer and not necessarily for housing. We're not builders. I think there's things we can do that can make, people come in, developers come in a little easier. Like one thing that's always been on the top of my mind in Kentville is we don't have a building inspector here. So we need to go through the county all the time. And that's quite a process. We have great staff at the town, but your application is submitted there and then it's got to be pushed off to the county. And there's nobody from the county here, is there? You are waiting. Sorry there. No, and they're busy too. And I'm not picking on the county, but there's quite a delay there. And it's kind of discouraging when we don't have our own. So that's one thing. Another thing that I think things we can do in our own town, like downtown Kentville, there's a lot of older buildings there. And a lot of the upstairs are vacant. And in our bylaws in the town, you have to have amenity spaces for all these apartment units. And when you take an old building that's got enough, say for 4 or 5 one-bedroom apartments, and you have to sacrifice a quarter of the unit or a third of the unit for an amenity space, it's hard because there's no outside space to call that amenity. When you build something new, you can designate a little green space outside, and that's your amenity space. So I think we can tweak those things, make it a little easier for people maybe to redevelop their properties downtown, so we can bring more housing in. And I know that's an idea that's kind of been tossed around. And I brought that forward, I think about a year ago. So hoping things like that can be tweaked. At the end of the day though, it is the province and we all deserve better. So I'm just going to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Brent, you go next.
Yeah, thanks. Municipal government has a limited scope. We can't do everything and be there for every challenge. As Andrew pointed out, housing generally falls under the province. But having a strong housing strategy that's able to be articulated to the community at large, being able to take time to listen to people and see what they need, so that we can work with developers, so that development is being done in a way that's meeting the need of the community. And again, housing challenges is not something that gets fixed overnight. it just isn't. It didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. Our community is changing. Nova Scotia is hoping to grow its number of residents. Mayor Snow talks about growing us to 10,000. So to grow us to 10,000, we need to have enough residents for that as well. We do have members within our community currently that are underhomed, people that are living in through transition. And so I think the role of the municipality that we can play here is looking at some forms of innovation. So currently the land bylaw use is looking at, backyard suites and some of those other pieces the province has put forward, and trying to find a way to remove some of that municipal red tape that takes a little bit of time, from the first time you submit your paperwork to waiting to figuring out when that next step is. I think there's an opportunity for us to do something there. It's also important that we create housing that's accessible for people, right? If we look around this room, we do have, I get to see the voting statistics. So I know that Kentville is a bit of a green population, which means people have some limited mobilities at some point in their life. So we also have to make sure that we build houses that are going to be able to be appropriate for those that are choosing to live here. Thanks.
Thank you, Brent. Paul?
Thank you, Raj. They are right. Housing is a provincial issue. But in order for the municipal governments to be a partner with the province, we need to be able to collaborate and meet and speak and be at the same table to talk about what your concerns are our concerns. One of the words that I always think about when I'm at the table with other leaders is, what are you doing for innovation for housing? Where you are now, what do you offer? Are you offering any rebates? Anything for homeowners right now that we can help them with energy savings? Number one. The other thing is, when developers come into our offices, what kind of discussions are we having with them? We know we need them, but we need each other. So when we ask the question, what are you looking to build? What we really should be saying is, this is our needs. Now, where are we going and how are we going to come together? Because that's the conversation that really needs to happen. We can be told to stay in our lane from municipal to provincial, and that's great. But we all know at the end of the day, our relationship with the province is important. We need their help, and they need ours. Conversation has to be the biggest piece, and showing up at the table and knocking on the province's door when we have questions and concerns, or when things are not happening fast enough. One of the things I learned when my first year as counselor, I couldn't imagine that we couldn't fix something in 3 months. I was like, 7 months later, how come we're still talking about the same issue? I learned a lot. The other piece is having a great relationship with nonprofits. We can learn a lot from them, and the conversation should continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And we move on to the next question from the Valley Chamber. Following a recent survey of our members, the Chamber of Commerce has taken a stance against implementation of deed transfer tax in the town, citing concerns over potential negative impacts on local businesses, housing affordability, and economic development in Kentville. What is your view on the deed transfer tax, and how do you believe it can affect the town's economic growth and overall community development? And we'll start with Brent.
Yeah, thanks. Now, this is a hot topic question here in Kentville, as I learned when it was passed a couple of months ago. So I had the great pleasure of sitting in the back of council, which is certainly probably more fun than sitting in the horseshoe sometimes. But the reality is it's happened. So what do we do with it now? Repealing the deed transfer tax is probably not something that's realistic. And again, our town has lots of needs. We were the only town in the province that didn't have a deed transfer tax, and lots of home buyers are expecting that when they come. We bought our first house, we knew we were going to pay what we call the welcome tax. Congratulations, you made your biggest purchase. Now give us more money. But the reality is I think we can be strategic on how we implement the deed transfer tax. There needs to be some foresight in how that tax is collected and what we do with it. Working with businesses and looking at perhaps maybe there are different avenues that we as a municipality can look at exempting certain purchases, be it first-time home buyers or people that are looking to move their businesses here. I think there are many options we can look into. But my biggest concern with the deed transfer tax is, again, it comes down to a big part of the vision here is we need to communicate with our residents a little bit better. I know all the rules were followed. We went through all the steps that needed to happen, but the deed transfer tax happened quite quickly. It was passed, and I know there were lots of people, including the chamber, that wrote a well-worded letter to the current council to say, maybe we can take pause and see what we want to do with this. I know we have lots of aspirations, a very large rec center. We have huge needs for infrastructure. The deed transfer tax can help alleviate some of our capital costs. I don't think we can make it go away, but we can certainly learn at educating our residents and our business owners to know what it's there for, how it's being used.
Thank you, Brent. Paula?
Thank you, Raj. Deed transfer tax. Well, let's start with this. I voted yes to the deed transfer tax. But it's important to allocate it to specific projects like infrastructure or a new rec center. Make that goal first. But the one thing that I did learn when I did lots of research on the deed transfer was this. It provides valuable insights from realtors, planners, and developers. It shows influences in development patterns. It gives us data for planning. It helps track population movements, identifying areas of growth or decline. Promotes more equitable development across a municipality's long-term planning. Leveraging the deed transfer tax effectively, municipalities can enhance the planning capabilities, support sustainable development, and improve overall community well-being. Having this information on hand reduces delays and the need sometimes for external consultants. This is new for us. We have a lot of learning, but like Brent had said, the cost of things are not going away. And just as an example, 1 kilometer of roads right now will cost us $1 million. We have more than 1 kilometer of road, so we got a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew?
Thank you. So this was a hot topic for council, and I know the county has tabled it now. I was against the deed transfer tax for a couple of reasons. And the first reason was I don't believe in the tax. I don't think people should have to pay tax. I also struggled with the timing of implementing it. I don't think it's the right climate right now to incorporate this. And when it was approved by council, and of course, when you're on council, the work of council, it goes forward. You have to establish what you're going to do with it. I was raised, and my father, he always said to me, it could rain tomorrow. And English was his second language, but that was the way of saying that you got to look ahead. Maybe it's sunny today, and it might rain down the line. So with a lot of units, when they do collect this tax, they store it away in a future capital. So it could be there for 5, 10, 15 years. And that could be designated for a recreation center or whatever it is. That's really where it should go, not touchable. Because when I hear people say that we needed it, I don't know if that's necessarily true, because in the last 2 years, the assessments rose, as we all know, and all of our property taxes went up, right? So everywhere, not just Kentville, every municipality, every town got extra cushioning in their revenue just because of that assessment going up. So I look at it and I don't think that we need it. Would I repeal it? I can't. I'm a one-person show, but if a new council came in and wanted to lower it or repeal it, they absolutely could. It's the work of 7 people in Kentville. It's not a one-man show. So if there was a future council and they wanted to lower the rate or drop it to 0%, they certainly could. That'd be the work of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so now we go on to the questions from the floor, starting with the first one. What leadership qualities are important to be mayor, and how have you demonstrated these qualities? How are you equipped to handle making tough decisions that might not be popular in the court of public opinion? And we'll start with Paula.
Thanks, Raj. You know, when you think of the word mayor, the word leadership seems to follow it. And in many ways, we've all had through our life a stint of leadership. I carry with me 40 years of being leadership and management. working with between 100 and 120 staff. Listening has to be the most important piece when it comes to being a leader and a mayor. A mayor, yes, has one vote, but the voice for many. That's the first piece we need to remember. I think about being mayor and I think about what needs would I be ready for? What's important to me? Building community and stakeholder relationships, improving the health and wellness of our community, advancing planning and future infrastructure, and promoting economic development through population growth and sustainable. Through everything, our priorities have to be people. And how we build community together addresses the needs for both seniors and aging populations, as well as ensuring a vibrant town for younger people to enjoy. When we take care of our people, we improve the wellness of our community. At the end of the day, when I say all that, one of the abilities that I have is a collaborator, and I can bring people together. As soon as you say, this is the topic, people are interested because you've said, would you like to comment? What do you think? That's what's important to this line right here.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew, you follow.
Thank you. So when you hear the word leadership, people sometimes think it's about power, and I don't see the role of mayor as about power. I see the role of mayor as bringing a council together, and I think that in itself would be, if I was elected mayor, would be my very first chore with a new council, is to bring them together and build them as a team. It's, you've got 6, 7 different personalities there, and it is hard to mesh them all together, but we all have to be on the same page. And that doesn't mean for every decision we're going to disagree. We have to find a way to work as a team. And I think a lot of the struggles on the current council, it was COVID. I'm going to blame COVID right now because we didn't have the opportunities to have people come in and do training that normally typically would have happened. I know in 2016, Mayor Snow had told us that they had all the training in the first term, but this term, because everything was shut down, we didn't have that. So we were kind of thrown in like fish. And it's a lot to learn in a very, very short time. So when I think of myself, I know when I look at Kentville, it is you're running a multi-million-dollar business at the end of the day. And you've got to make sure your services are there and that everything's, set up the way it should be. So I'm a good business person. I'm going to toot my horn right now. But we have to take care of what's in front of us. And that, of course, is, we got to lead the way. It's our flooding issues and our infrastructure and our facilities. And to me, it's not hard because we know where the problems are, but we got to get to work on them. And I know I'll be able to lead a new team forward. But we have to come together from the very beginning and commit to doing the best we can for Kentville. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Brent?
Yeah, so I'm glad I took some notes on leadership here because I only have 2 minutes to try to get this out. But, it's important to be able to make a tough decision that people don't always like. It's just part of life. It's interesting and it may seem trivial, but a good example of this is 8 months ago, I was selected to be the captain of Team Canada's World Triathlon Championship team. My wife and I were supposed to be on a plane last night going to Malaga, Spain, so I can go compete in this fun event where I can wear some lycra and swim in the beach and have a good old time. But we made a choice to come and do this. Would I prefer to be in Spain than sitting here in front of all of you? Probably. But I do believe that we all have a civic duty. I believe we have to put our community first sometimes. And sometimes that means doing things that isn't easy. Sometimes that means doing things that doesn't make everybody happy. But at the end of the day, we have to be grown-ups and be okay with that. Right? I believe in resolution-based decision-making, which means we make a resolution, we deal with it, we shake hands, we move on, we get on with it. Right? I do believe that, things were a lot easier when we didn't have that little rectangle that lived in our pocket or our purse that was always really close, that we reached for and wanted to see what other people were thinking about it. I believe in including people in the decision process. I believe listening to people, and I believe doing the right thing for the biggest number of folks. There's many different types of leadership styles. The concept of servant leadership comes to mind when you think of, local, municipal, and provincial government. You've got to work in the, the interest of the greater good. And the only way you're going to know if you're doing that is if you're listening to other folks. So you've got to be accessible and able to hear other folks. My grandmother used to say, I've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. They're very large, so I have to use them judiciously. So I should speak less than I listen. Thanks.
Thank you, Brent. This is a good second follow-up question. What is your vision for the town? If you are in the driver's seat of the bus for the citizens of Kentville, where are you planning to take the bus? Let's start with Andrew on
I
that.
knew you were going to start with me first. And I learned to drive in Lebanon, by the way, and there's no rules there. So you know what? I honestly, I'm not going to sit up here and give you fake promises and build Disney World downtown, because we know what's wrong in town. I don't know how many of you live on West Main or how many of you know about the flooding issues. That's got to be the number one priority. So I'm going to take you for a bus tour there first. In order to do that, though, and this is what's been missing in this town this term anyway, and for whatever reason, we never sat down with council and strategized with staff, rather. Staff and council never got together at the beginning of the term and made strategic plans way forward for the town. So every time we got a budget every year, we've got a tremendous staff. They would put a budget together and they'd bring it to council and we'd vote on it. And we may pick little pieces here and there, but as a council as a whole, we didn't really sit down and give them our vision so that we could work together. And I think that's right off the top. You got to put storm planning on there. So we need to budget. And this could be 10 years worth of work, but it's got to be built into every budget. So we're going to work on that. We have a lot of infrastructure. It's got to be looked at. And then, of course, one of the big things for me right now is our rink, which needs a lot of repairs. Like, we're talking millions and millions. And the question's going to come very soon. It had come a few months ago, but it's going to come forward soon, whether we're going to spend 20 million or upwards of $20 million to revamp that rink, which is still going to have the same parking space, still going to have the same size facility, or are we going to look to do something else? So those are kind of the big ticket items right now. It all comes down to better decisions, better spending, and that's where I'm going to take you on the bus ride. There's no Disney for the next 4 years. And there's no travel, and we're going to stay in Kentville. We're going to focus on Kentville, and we're going to spend our money in Kentville. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Brent, you're next.
Yeah, so I started with my analogy that if you're going on a road trip and you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So I appreciate the bus shout out. Whoever submitted that question, thank you. So I believe that all government needs to start with a plan. When we think of traditional election papers and their platforms, and it says a bunch of things. Some people do it in a costed manner, people do it in an uncosted manner, so they're not really sure how they're going to get there. So I think that's the first step, is we as a community, citizens need to know where we're going. I appreciate Andrew mentioning West Main. That's where I live. I'm fortunate that we live up on a hill, so if our house ever floods, you need to get an ark because we're all flooded. But infrastructure is certainly something that needs to happen. The infrastructure challenges that we have didn't happen overnight. I met with the CAO this morning to ask a couple of questions to make sure I was, in the right lanes. I didn't want to say anything that wasn't true, but I do know that we've got a great consulting firm that's going to do a stormwater management plan, and that's just looking at our current infrastructure, what we currently have, not anything else that's coming, because all you can look at is what's currently here. I think we need to find a way to make sure that citizens have a voice, because that seems to be the largest piece of feedback that I'm getting is, Park Street is going to be shut down tomorrow. If you live on Park Street, don't forget to turn off your water, turn off your hot water tank, because you don't want to let fun stuff in your water, because they're going to finish off some of the kind of wastewater management. But some people who live there didn't even get a notice. It was posted on Facebook, which is great, but not everybody lives on Facebook. So again, trying to meet people where they're at is tricky. I'm not saying I have the silver bullet, but I think there are some tried and tested things that we can go back to. I think it's important that we find ways to engage people, and I'll take the roundup for that. That'll be it.
Thank you, Brent. Paula?
Thanks, Raj. Well, I guess if we're going to go on a bus trip, that's a huge problem because I can't drive. So I guess I'm going to have to rope my husband into taking us on that tour. But you know what? The first stop, you know where I would go? KCA school. And I would go in to speak to the children, and I would say 2 things. 1, What do you love about Kentville? Let's start there. Next question. What would you like to see in Kentville? Because guess what? It's their future. Now, I'm sure there'll be lots of great answers and some we would love, but the first thing what it would do is it would make us sit back and realize we have a lot of heavy things to look after. We know that. We know we have stormwater. We know we have flooding. We know we have housing, us and the rest of Canada. However, let's look at who we are first. Because when I moved here 20 years ago, this was a great town. It's even better now. I love it here. But sometimes we forget all the great things we already have. So on the bus, after we leave the school, we're going to drive down Main Street. And we're going to look at the growth that has happened in 20 years. But the growth that we have, let's talk about the restaurants that are there and the small businesses that are there. And how do we help them? So we're going to get off the bus and we're going to ask them, what do they need? Because they are our bloodline downtown. Let's start with that, because we have success downtown. Everybody has success. Everybody starts to see, we ask the question, why do we want to invest in Kentville? Well, come on our bus. I'm going to show you why you need to. There's lots here we can celebrate. That's where we're going to start. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Question number 3 from the floor. In the past, concerns have been raised about transparency in town council's decision-making process. How will you work to build public trust, increase transparency, and ensure meaningful community involvement in decisions that shape Kentville's future, while also ensuring projects and initiatives move forward without unnecessary delays? And we'll start with Brent.
Yeah, thanks. I commented that you did a great job in Wolfville, and these are the notes. I pulled it out before the question was asked, so I'm glad I got transparency or transparent governance in front of me. That was also something that I think is extremely key. It's easy to make decisions. It's easy to sit there and go through it, and I know a lot of work happens. I don't want to discredit any of the work the current council or any other councils have done, but it's important that you find a vehicle to be able to share that. To share what's going good and what's not going so good. There's lots of challenges this town faces. There's legal battles. There's lots of things that can't necessarily be shared as openly because, again, legal cases can't be shared as transparently as some people may like. But we can probably let people know that some of those things are happening in a way that they can then realize, like, we can't talk about it because there's a current court case going on. Secondly, after the last council meeting, whoever built that little video that took a 3-hour meeting into a 45-second video did a great job. I think just being able to find a way to articulate the work of the local government on a regular basis back to its people so they know what's going on, to see how far we're moving towards our collective goal together is important. I think we need to find a way to communicate clearly in a way that people actually understand. So a really good example of that is we're going to get a wastewater management study done by Dillon Consulting. Consultants will probably put back a 300-page document that probably isn't readable by the average person. So maybe having somebody that can go through that and pull out kind of the salient points, those hot topic issues. And I'm a big believer in creating local forums. Like, this is great. And I'm glad to see that in our last couple of council meetings, there's been a couple of folks there, but finding a way to do that on a regular basis would be helpful.
Thank you, Brent. Paula, you follow.
Thank you. When I think of transparency, the first thing I think about is a strategic plan. That's where it starts. We talk about, we're going to pick top 3. Any more than that, you lose sight. But what needs to happen once a strategic plan is placed, every meeting, whether that is CAC every second Monday or a council meeting at the end of every month, those 3 things are talked about and how far we have come. What are the costs? What's the deadlines? And then also, when you talk about cost, not only what will it cost us, but what will it cost us if we don't do it? And let's see where that conversation goes. The other piece is, it is about community conversation. Besides these forums, one of my favorites is focus groups. because you can have smaller groups and you get way better conversation because people are more comfortable in talking in smaller groups. Planning committees, advisory committees, all those things help and contribute to what we are making decisions on in council, because actually those decisions are for you. They're not for us. They're for the town of Kentville. That's where it starts. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew, you're on.
Thank you. So just because I'm on council now, I'll say I wouldn't say the decisions are quick. And we do get a lot of information. Like when we get our packages a couple days before the meeting, like there's sometimes a couple hundred pages there. And some of these guys write us like books. And I mean, they do a great job. So we always get a fulsome scope of what the decision is. How, a counselor makes a decision, I mean, that's up to them. I can't speak for any of them or only for myself. Some things I think that are missing, though, is there needs to be more engagement with the public. And I said that in my first year. We had a forum at the Main Street Station Inn, and people came. It was a nice venue because to come to a council meeting and sit there for 3-4 hours, the public has to wait until the very end to speak. And then even at that, you have 3 minutes. And so I always like to see a couple of events a year where public can come, just like right now, and council sitting there, and you can get up and say what you want respectfully, and we can have open dialogue and hear things that we probably wouldn't even know about. That's a key piece that has been missing that we need to bring back. And at our meetings, the way that they're structured now, we don't communicate with the people who come up and speak. They got their 2 minutes and they speak, and then they leave, and they still have no answer to their question. So I think that's important. There should be a follow-up and kind of get the conversation going and find out what the problem is and how can we help. The other thing, though, that we're missing as well, this is the other piece, we're missing some key committees, and we definitely need a planning advisory committee in this town. I know Councillor Gerard for the last 4 years, probably longer than that, has put that on the table. That needs to happen right away. Probably should have a recreation committee. I mean, there's a lot of great citizens in this town. I'm sure that would volunteer to sit on them. So I'd like to see some more committee work, and then we all come together and we work on all the hard decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. We go on to the next question. How will you consider environmental factors and sustainability in the planning and development of our town? What do you think is important to consider as we grow? And we'll let Paula start this debate.
Thanks, Raj. That's a hard question. There's so much to think about. One thing you start to think about when it's all about development, but you have to think about green spaces. And, you think about, what is a green space? Besides green grass, like, what is it? Sometimes it's a great place for community members, if they're out walking, to sit and just take a bit of peace in their mind and let the day go. That to me might sound relaxing to you, but that's what I call goes back to mental health of our residents. That's the first thing. The other piece I think about, what about the places we have now that we have to look forward to in looking after? We have a great place, Miners Marsh. We have a bird sanctuary. We have, I don't know if you've ever taken a walk down your street, but do you see the number of dogs that are out lately? We have a dog park, and I've heard they bark a lot. But we have it. All those pieces are not only built for one or two, but they're built for all. I may not have a dog, but I like to go there because it's enjoyable. But we also have to think about, if we're going to build green spaces, the developer has to know what's important to us. Where is it going to be? Is it going to be protected and safe? Will it be flooded? We have to look at that. I know all that will come back to a stormwater plan, which is great, and I'm not going to harp on that. However, that is the big piece where it starts. Lastly, I also think about safety when I think about environment and I think about green spaces and comfort, because we need to be safe in where we walk, where we sit, where we live. All that needs to be accounted into the buildings.
Thank you, Paul. Andrew, your response.
Thank you. So we've had a lot of developments come before council in the last 3-4 months. And I mean, probably the most we've had in the last 4 years. And there were some tough decisions there that we had to make. I think when I look at a development, though, my biggest concern is the infrastructure going to handle it? That's the first thing you got to look at. It's great to bring all this development in, but it's got to fit where it's going to go. It's got to fit in the area, and we have to be able to support it. I think, though, the other piece that we're missing is that, and I mentioned it a few minutes ago, is that planning advisory committee. We don't have enough input from the public. We need citizens on there so that we can work with them. It can't just be council alone, collecting this information and giving it to council before decisions are made. And the other piece that I've been on this for a long time too, is that Kentville doesn't do development agreements with their developers. And it would require some change to our planning documents, but I think it's time we do, because as a developer comes in, they get a piece of land rezoned, give you an example, from industrial to residential or whatever the case may be, and then they're kind of free. As long as it fits that mold, they can do what they want. With development agreements, though, council has the control to come in and say, you know what, we'd like to see you have 4 green spaces there. We want to see you have, 4 3-story buildings there. We've got some more control there. We know what's coming. We're preparing for it, rather than just take a blank canvas and give them the ability to do what they want. I think it's time to implement that in our planning documents. And it's for better planning and just better future ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Brent?
Yeah, so sustainability. Sustainability means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? It is kind of one of those fun buzzwords that's going around these days. There's targets for 2030, and municipalities have a role to play in that to achieve those targets. There's renewable green energy that sometimes isn't necessarily the municipality's government's kind of goal to go and do that. But we have solar panels on our roof. There's lots of residents in the town of Kentville that have solar panels on their roofs that are doing things to try to make our community a little more green and a little bit more sustainable. But probably the most salient piece that is going to affect us is how we manage stormwater management. When we have big old growth trees, they absorb a lot of water. When we don't clear cut, swaths of land to put roads, those trees absorb water. I am a little hippy dippy touchy feely, so you'll have to let me go on a little bit on this, but it does play a role. And you can work with developers to come up with sustainable green initiatives for their development. It's not just a green park, but maybe it's reserving certain high slope lands to be kept green. It could be ensuring that a certain number of trees that are displaced are replaced somewhere else. I don't have all the magical answers, but I do know there are lots of things we can do from a proactive standpoint to ensure that we're making the best decision for our future. And I really do believe that this next council can be one that's transformational and not transactional, and one that can be proactive and not just reactive.
Thank you, Ren. Question number 5. What do you feel is the town's role in supporting downtown businesses, and what are some ways support can be improved? And we'll start with Andrew on this one.
Thank you. You just picked me because I'm downtown, right?
There you go.
We have the Kentville business community, which has done a bang up job over the last 2-3 years. They revamped and they've done a great job. They always did a good job, but I got to give them shout out the last 3-4 years. You look at the holiday season, and I mean, Kentville does look like a Hallmark movie when you go downtown. It's beautiful. So I think there's ways we can support them. One of the biggest issues downtown, I think, is the parking. I know I hear it all the time that somebody will come in for a haircut and they want to have lunch, and then they want to go do a little shopping and they're afraid they're going to get a ticket. And once you give somebody a ticket, and it may be $15, and I mean, Harlan Wood's a great guy, but people are rubbed the wrong way and they don't want to come back. And I hate to see that happen. So I'd like to work at some point to see if we can do something to kind of help that problem. The other thing I think it's really about marketing. Like, we're a pretty unique little town. We're not one street like Wolfville. We have blocks. And I always like to get right in a business, I've done this myself. I like to get right in there so that you know the owner, you know who's in there, you know what they have. And I think, and I'm just giving a little tip here, but it would be nice to have those little innovative, kind of like meet you and get to know you so that people know why Kentville's a destination. I think that always helps. Very important piece. And there was one more thing I was going to mention, and I wrote it down. I'm not going to look at notes. I never do. It just has elapsed my mind. Anyway,
It'll come back. to
it'll
you.
come back when I'm done. It'll come back. Carry
Thank you, Andrew.
you.
Brent, your response.
Yeah. We're here tonight because of the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce. They're across the street. There's lots of great resources here. And we have lots of great little unique little shops here in Kentville that we love to go to. It's convenient. And one of the big kind of selling factors to us living in Kentville was because we can walk everywhere. I like to walk. That's helpful. Sometimes we can drive there. But you can get everything you need. You don't have to leave Kentville. And I think we need to find a way to make sure that we can build on that we support our local businesses, that we give them the right type of support that they need, that we find a way to promote them. And I think the Kentville business community does a good job at that. But I think there's probably more work that can be done, because I don't think every local business sees themselves there. And I think just like any part of town, we can't be everything to everybody, but we sure can try. There's lots of really neat people here that have small businesses that are focused on innovation. There's lots of people that are working here that have chosen Kentville as their home, have come from other provinces to make this the place where they want to raise their family or spend their time. And I think we can collaborate as a municipal government probably in a more effective way too. I think there's lots of, as Andrew mentioned, this does look like a Hallmark movie, the twinkly lights, it's nice out. But sometimes, just in the last number of weeks, the joy of, running for mayor means you have real tough conversations with people. And some of those businesses feel like they've had a bit of a tough time. They don't always feel heard. There's some hoops you have to jump through. So is life. But maybe we need to make sure that when we can, for newer startup businesses or people who want to relocate here, that we maybe find ways to make that more successful for them.
Thank you, Brent. Paula, your thoughts?
Thank you. Over the past few years, for sure, the business community has changed for the good. But the one thing that we can't forget is we need to go back to the business owners and ask, how's it going? What do you need? Just because we asked them this year, you can't wait for another 2-3 years to go back and ask them again, because their needs change, because our needs change. The one thing we have going for us, we have the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce, we have the KBC, which is the Kentville Business Community, and we have the Valley Wren, so the Regional Enterprise Network. The three of those stakeholders, we have them right here in our backyard. We need to be utilizing them to help us, especially with information. These are the things we've heard, whether it's increased traffic, a bigger scope of selection. How do we do that? We want to see the three of those stakeholders help us to work together, but also they each bring their own individuality to each piece that they do. One is very strong in tourism. And we know here in the Annapolis Valley, especially this time of year, have you seen the lineup on the highway to come to the valley? We know this is where people want to be. So when they come, we want to make sure we have everything downtown or outside to keep them here. The biggest thing here is conversation. Ask me what I think. And guess what? I am a business owner. I'm not a brick and mortar. I do it from home. But I ask myself the same questions. And I spend a lot of time visiting the Valley Wren and the Chamber of Commerce. Probably too much. However, it's very needed here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. On to the next question. Please brace yourself. The town of Kentville has faced a number of lawsuits that have been financially costly and detrimental to the trust between the council and the town. How do you think the town can navigate a future where less time and fewer resources are dedicated to litigation? Brent, you want to start on this one?
Yeah. So as a former consultant, I would often do, strategic plans and things like that. And I'd always joke that my crystal ball is broken. So if somebody here has the magical legal crystal ball, I would love to see it and maybe provide a more fulsome answer. But the reality is that litigation happens. I'm not a lawyer. I can't provide legal advice, but it does happen. I think what we can do as a town is own up. I had a mentor very early on in my life that said, Brent, there's going to come a time where you're going to eat crow. Eat it while it's fresh. So when we make decisions that affect us negatively, be it through our own design or through something that's happened before, I think it's important that we own it. That we say, yeah, listen, something happened. We're going, there's some litigation that's going to happen. We can't talk about it, but we're going to try to find a way to learn from it, right? We're going to try to find a way so it doesn't happen again. And I think that, the town does do a good job. If you look hard enough, you can find the numbers. And I think the town has come a long way when it comes to transparency and communication with the way expenses are and where you can find stuff on the website. There's still a little bit of work to be done there, but like everybody, so if you want to find out how much the town has spent on legal fees, you can. You just have to go looking for it. And I think there's a vehicle where we can do that to make it a little easier. It's not a great thing to talk about, let's be honest. Nobody wants to put their tax dollars towards litigation. And that's how towns make money, right? Taxation is inevitable, but we want to make sure that we put our taxation towards things that are important, fixing our infrastructure, making sure that we're living the community we want to, and not necessarily paying lawyers to go sit in a court. Although to all the lawyers here, I do still want your support. I think you're important, but maybe not in that particular capacity.
Thank you very much, Brent. Paula, your response, please.
Thank you. Legal fees. Nobody wants them. However, like Brent said, sometimes things happen. They will be there. But a lot of times when you think about when it happens, let's go back to the beginning of how it happened. Was there equal conversation at the table? Did you ask me what I thought? And did you respect what I said? I think a lot of times it can come back to conversation and being respected. And if I made a mistake, it's like, you know what, I'm sorry. I didn't really mean to say that. I was a little heated. Sometimes we as municipalities, and it's not just us, we get caught up with those words. Robert's rule? Sometimes if he was here, I'd really kind of want to talk to him. 1865, how could you have these rules back then? But instead of being caught up with, we can't say this and we can't say that, and I'm going to call you out on it, let's take a minute. Everybody just calm down and think about what just happened. Now, let's start again. Sometimes that will fix it. And say, I'm sorry, now we're ready to move on with some clarity. Let's start again. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew?
Thank you. So there's a lot of, let me start this again. We've had a lot of changeover in administration with the town of Kentville in the last 5 years. And things are really good now where information is being shared and council feels like they're in the knowing of what's going on. A lot of cases, first of all, council doesn't always have to know about every lawsuit. A lot of them could have to do with personnel, or they could be issues that really aren't our forte, and insurance covers some of them as well. So just because you go online and you see that there's 3 or 4 matters with the town of Kentville, it doesn't mean that it's in the hands of council. We most of the time have nothing to do with them. It is though now nice to see, at least we're in the know about them. So we know that they exist, and insurance will deal with that, and the lawyers. It's not, most of them, as I said, will not come back before council to make a decision. Sometimes though, poor decisions can result in legal, and I think I go back to what I said at the beginning, that with the right administration there kind of guiding council and letting them know what their decisions could or couldn't do, may do, is a really key component. Because if you've got a good admin there, they're giving you good advice, and that's what they're there for. I mean, they've got the qualifications. We're not lawyers. I'm not anyways. And so it's nice to have that experience, someone kind of guiding you a little bit and letting you know that if you decide to go this way, this could happen. Things aren't always black or white, and you need really good staff there to guide you, and then you kind of go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next question. At present, there isn't a consistent nor cohesive position from the council on its members attending conferences or professional development. What's your position on the matter, And how do you propose to unite the future council in coming to a policy position? And we'll start with Paula on that one.
Thank you. Everybody on council should have a time to go to conference. You need to be at the table in order to bring new perspectives with you and bring new perspectives back with you. You can't solve everything that's happening in your own town by yourself. It's impossible. Showing up at the table shows Kentville is interested. It doesn't have to be the same person. If you want to go back and redo a policy where everybody gets a turn because it's educational, especially for new counselors, I think it's a great idea. But we need to be at this table. Moving forward, Kentville is in a competition. There's no other way to say it. Everybody wants to reach out to the province and the feds for money, everybody. So if they're there at the table and we're not, the question is, why not? Why aren't we there? We are as important as a 6,700 to 7,000 population as 100,000. I want our voice at the table. I don't care who goes. But what we're doing is we're representing Kentville. We need to be there. Just relook at the policy if it's something that you want to do, but it is very important we are represented.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew, your response?
Thank you. So I've always been very vocal about travel. I think, and I said this years ago, our policies are outdated for council, and they really should be looked at. I know as a council, we were going to look at them, we just never got to it. When somebody goes away and spends our tax dollars, and I'm a taxpayer too, so I call it mine too, I want to know what they're bringing back to the table, because to go to these conferences is very expensive. I mean, you can spend $4,000 or $5,000 in 3-4 days very easily. And we say that we're going to send them to the Federation of Municipalities, and they're going to go and they're going to meet and greet, and that's great. And I'm not discounting some of these trips. I'm sure that there's some value to them. But I look at larger units like West Hants, they don't go to them. Woofle doesn't attend them. But Woofle is still able to get grant money all the time. They can still apply for grants. You don't need to go on these trips for 3 or 4 days and use $4,000 or $5,000 worth of tax dollars to get these grants. You can still apply for them right here in Kentville. We have great grant writers on staff. You're probably some of the best in the province. So I struggle with that. But I think moving ahead, what I'd like to see is a policy where before there's any travel, I want to know where you're going. And this would be for me if I was going to go somewhere. And I don't go too far, but I'd want to know where you're going, what you're going to bring back from it. And I think all of council should know, because there's been travel that I don't know about it until I get a council report in the package that somebody's already gone and come back, and I see the cost and I wonder what was this? What was the buy-in for the town? And then you add up all this over the course of a year or 2 years, and we have a footbridge that's broken behind the ball field over here to go on the trail, and we don't have the money to pay for that. So you kind of have to think where your money's going to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Brian?
Yeah, so I'm a lifelong learner, so this is a tricky one. But as the non-incumbent, I get to say whatever I'd like because I am not currently on council. But I do believe that you don't have to recreate the wheel. I mean, let's be honest. We're not the only 6,800 to 7,000, citizen-sized town, and we can look at like-sized budgets and see what other people do. Investing in professional development has an impact more than just the dollars that are there. And I'm a big picture person, and I'm not always the small details. Like, I'm okay at looking at Legos, but putting them all together really isn't my thing. So recognizing that we've got a great finance team, there are some really solid folks. The director of finance is a CPA. So once the budget is built and it's done in consultation with everybody else, I think if the money's there and the investment makes sense, I think having a strong policy, if one is outdated, then I think it's about looking at that policy, looking at other municipalities, and if it is going to the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities and asking, what do other people do? I think that could be important. But I also think accountability works both ways. So if councillors decide to go to a conference, then I think they need to make sure they can articulate the value of that, not just at a council meeting. So if somebody goes to a national conference on development. Well, then I would encourage that counselor to have a little town hall where they say, I'm going to share what I learned at my conference on development, because I'm sure there's other people in this community that would be interested in learning about that. So, I think it's important. I like to live my life in, kind of the zone of hope and not in scarcity. I think we can always do better. We just need to make sure we have a plan that gets us there, that's accountable.
Thank you very much, Brent. Next question. This is a little bit tricky, but I'm sure you guys are prepared for this. What do you feel is the biggest strength of your opponents regarding their ability to be a mayor? Let's start with
You're
Andrew.
going to start with me. Knew you were going to start with me. Wow, that's a question. You want me to start on the right or the left?
Whichever you choose.
Let's start on the right. So I know both of these people pretty well. I know Paula a lot longer. She's always been in the service people, and she's been great at that. It's probably one of the sweetest people you'll meet. Very kind and easy to talk to. So I got to say those are very good qualities Paula's got. She's going to be available and she's going to listen. Going to switch over to Brent now, who I just met a year and a half ago because I'm on the fire commission. Brent makes great coffee, first of all, the best coffee, I got to say. Do you make it? No. Okay. No, he always has good coffee. Very well organized. Our meetings are in this building here, and he's always prepared. And if he's missing something, he'll go and grab it because I never have a pen. So he's always prepared. And so I know he's organized and he's got that skill set. You know what? They're both great people. And I got to tell you, everybody that's running on council, all 13 of them, I know all of them as well. It pays to have a store downtown Kentville. You get to know everybody, and they're all great people. So that's what I'm going to say about those two. Thanks for that question, Raj.
Thank you, Andrew. It wasn't mine, so it's coming from the citizens of Kentville. Yeah. Brent, you're next.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, anybody that's going to run for council deserves a medal, because I had no idea the types of conversations you're going to have. So everybody that puts their name on a ballot deserves a round of applause, because it is a full contact sport and it takes all of your time. So, yeah. So I'll start with Andrew and we'll work our way down to Paula. I think, the advantage they both bring is they've been in this role before. Andrew's been here for 4 years. He's lived here, for over a decade. He runs a business. He's well connected within the community. People know him. He's approachable. And I think that those skill sets do transfer over to being a mayor. He sat down at the table. He understands what the types of conversations are going to be. And I think that's a value there. He does know what he's getting into. He started this evening by saying he thought about it 4 years ago to run for mayor, but thought he would dip his toe in the water. And I think that's probably a really smart way to do this. Paula, similar to myself, is a bit of a hustler. I say that with all the most amount of respect, because I know she goes out and helps small and larger companies. She does have a strong background in professional development, in leadership, and she is extremely passionate. She doesn't just kind of put a foot in the water. I know she jumps in with both feet, and I think that citizens are going to have a tough go. You've got some qualified candidates up here. And I know that at the end of the day, whoever is going to be successful is going to help lead our town to where it needs to be.
Thank you very much, Brent. Paula, your thoughts?
I'll start with you first.
I guess I've known Andrew the longest, first of all. I knew him a little bit before we were on council. He's a great dad. I was going to start there. He can talk to any age of people, really. People come to him just to discuss whatever they want, even if it's a great pair of shoes that you just got in. They can have that conversation. And you listen to them. That's what I can tell you. And you like to work. You're a workhorse, for sure. Yep. Brent, I haven't known you that long. We do have a lot in common, for sure, especially with our philanthropy work. We've had great conversations, not many, but what we've had, they've been fun and learning as well. So the one thing I think with Brent and I learning about each other on this canvassing trail, we've found things that we may disagree on, but the two of us actually look at each other and say, "Why is that? Why do you not like that?" And I admire that for sure. And you know what? Three of us up here, we love Kentville. That's the thing. We've got our name on the plate for nothing better than that and wanting Kentville to succeed. So our heart is in it for sure.
Thank you, Paula. You guys did very well. Well, next question. With discussions underway about a regional recreational facility, what is your view on this joint project for the valley? If in favor, how would you balance this regional initiative with the need for recreational infrastructure upgrades within the town? And we'll start with Brent.
Yeah, so my background's in rec. I have a college degree. I have a BA in leisure sciences. So, and I like to be physically active. It's just one of those things that keeps me sane and going. So, rec services are extremely important. A large facility would be ideal, for residents of the town to not have to go to Acadia and Wolfville. That can sometimes be a little daunting for people that just want to try out getting back in shape with a bunch of, varsity athletes and college kids. Sometimes that's not everybody's best place to start. And there's a little bit of stigma going to Waterville and the pool there too. I've heard from some folks that it's a little challenging. Our pool we have in the summer is certainly well attended. People love to swim. We've got some lakes and other things. But again, it comes down to the financial cost of all of that. So, when Andrew discussed, what's the rink going to cost to keep going? I think we need to take a strategic approach to what do we want to see in recreational services? What can we afford? How do we find a way to balance all of that together? Is it a private partnership? Is it working with a nonprofit that's going to help raise some cash for the facility as well? And then remembering that it's not just building the facility, it's not just bricks and mortars, it's then the year-long operational costs. And how do you find a way to not only source that, is it through program fees or other pieces? So certainly not an easy question, but certainly one that I've heard for people who've lived here for over, a couple of decades, that it's been in the talks for a long time. And people definitely want it. We know that if we invest in our healthcare, we're going to live longer, we're going to live healthier. So there's a great value there. How do we do it? I don't know today. I'm sure there's a way to move forward. I know there's been some studies done, so we just need to look at the work.
Thank you, Brent. Paula, your thoughts?
Thank you. Would I love to have a rec facility? Absolutely. I think it can bring and improve the quality of life for so many people here. But let's talk about reality. It's not going to cost a small amount of money. It's going to take partnership. We can't do it by ourselves. There's no way. This conversation has gone on way before when I joined council. And it seems like it's forever when someone says, are we still talking about the facility? And I'm sure years ago when it was talked about, it was probably only $40 million only. Because now it's probably over 100 million. And that's if we started the ground digging today. So that's the reality of where is the money going to come from. A lot of people compare it to Berwick, but they did a lot of fundraising for that. And that's a big responsibility for someone to take on. It takes years to raise that money. But do we need it? Yes, we do. How we're going to get there? I feel the conversation is good, but who knows? I'd love to be able to say we're close. I'm not sure. The one thing that I've always said, if and when we build, we need to know what our ROI is going to be. So what is our return on investment when we're building something like this? We need to have rooms there that people can rent and have their small conferences. Because if we just have one building for one thing, it's not good enough. Anytime we do something for the town, whether it's build or be a partner, there should be 3 things that we can take from that. One is not good enough anymore. So what is our return on investment? Listen, if we can rent that out 24/7, let's do it. Because we build it, they will come. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew?
Thank you. So this has been probably the last 3.5 years on our council. We've had discussion on this, and Councillor York would always bring us back information, and I'm sure she wanted to pull her hair out many times because you're working with other partners. You're working with the town of Wolfville and the municipality of County of Kings, and to get 3 people on the same page on such a big project is definitely a struggle. I attended the county forum a couple weeks ago, and the 4 candidates running, I believe all 4 of them were against having any kind of recreational center at all. Now they're just running, and they're just, I don't want to say they're just the mayors, but it takes a group that's going to make a decision, right? So that could change. I'm not going to put a lot of weight into those comments. Would I like to see one? Sure. I think that the Valley, Kings County deserves one. Where it's going to go, I'm not sure, and how, or if all those partners are going to be a part of it. We don't even have the answer to that. So I feel if one pulls out and there's only 2, it might be too costly. It's really, really far off. The other thing though, and I'm going to just piggyback on our rink, which needs like way over $20 million to kind of keep it at standard. And I look to West Hants. I don't know how many of you have been to the rink there. They have a beautiful facility there on Wentworth Road, and my cousin's the mayor there. He's been the mayor there for the last 8 years. And they got, I think it cost them, tax dollars was $5 million, and the rest of it was all funded through the province and the federal government. And I think it may be time for us to make a few phone calls. If whoever's in, and if it's not me, then one of you should make some phone calls, because I think we can get funding to do something in Kentville if we have to. So if this collaboration fails, then it's time for Kentville to get on their bandwagon and get something going. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. All right. Kentville has experienced increased flooding in recent years, raising concerns about the town's infrastructure and preparedness for climate-related changes. What specific actions will you take to improve flood mitigation and protect vulnerable areas, and how do you plan to address the criticism that past efforts have been insufficient in safeguarding residents and businesses? I'm going to start with Paula on this one.
That's a big question. Holy. Okay, let's start. You know what? We just have to learn from the future. We have to learn what didn't work. Things have changed. Developments have changed. Infrastructure is old. We're an old town. We're a great town, but we're an old town. End of life. That is a huge cost. Should we have had a stormwater management plan before? Sure. But guess what? Now we're getting one. So we have to learn from any mistakes we made and get this report and move forward. But the one thing we have to remember, when we get the report, we have to share the information with you. Every meeting, tie that goal into our strategic plan so you're inundated and you're up to date with information that's coming through. Have our focus groups and our forums, making sure that everybody learns on the way. Is this going to be for everybody? The plan is for everybody. Are people upset right now for what's been happening? Yes. Do you blame them? No. Our homes are what we work for. We are now here as council, the short time we have left. We are blessed now to at least say we have a good consultant company hired to do our plan for us. We have to learn from that and move forward. Take it piece by piece, because I can imagine it's going to be more than 50 pages. Learning for the future is actually learning from the past, really is how it's going to work. But we have to listen to our developers and our professionals, because I am not an engineer or a planner, and I have to trust what comes from that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew, your thoughts?
Thank you. So flooding is important. I know the house that we did buy when we moved to Kentville, the basement wasn't finished. And as we kept having kids, I needed a place for them to go so that I could have a little bit of peace. And as we started to work on the basement, it was a month into it, the drywall was up. Well, I started to get water into the basement. was a drainage issue, and thankfully we're able to correct it. So I'm not going to pretend I know what it's like to live on West Main or on Condon, and every time that it rains heavy, you're in fear, because that's the reality of it. And these 1 in 100 year floods are a couple times a year now. So, and even if it's not projected to be some huge rainstorm, you're still going to think, what if I get flooded this time? So I think, and this council has, we agreed to the stormwater plan. So when we get this, I think in early spring when it comes out, and it's going to prioritize which areas are the hot spots, I think it's a no-brainer that a new council, whoever that is, has to come in and start working away at those and build those projects into our budgets for the next 5-10 years and just have them there. And if that means we're not doing something else, that's fine. Those have to be done. There's no reason not to, and you have to keep moving on with it. So when new developments come, you have to make sure that they're not going to impact areas that we have. I think though, you have to commit to that, and that's, like I said, right off the top of the game. As soon as that comes out, and the top 10 places, or when that report comes, is just to sit down and say, this one's going to cost $2 million. We're going to project this one for this year, and it's going to be built in, and we're going to get it done, and then move on to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Brent?
Yeah, so I just want to start by saying climate change is real. Okay, so it is a real thing. It's getting warmer. We're getting more rain. 1 in 100 year storms or 1 in 20 year storms. There's lots of things that are happening. So we need to understand that a town where a lot of our infrastructure was built in the 50s probably doesn't cut it today. And I think Paula said this quite well. We have to learn from the past, but we can't necessarily be held to the standards we were in the past neither, right? There are calculations for end of life for lots of things. If anybody here owns a business, you own something, you amortize it over a period of time, and then it's no longer worth anything, and then you need to replace it. The same thing is true for infrastructure. It's just a little trickier because you don't see it, right? It's not like the car that doesn't start, because you might not be able to see that there's a leak in a pipe or something like that because it's underground. I'm a big fan of analogies. So here's my little thing. We drive our car, there's a little rear view mirror, right? That allows us to see the past, what's behind us. Very important, but it's a lot smaller than the window in front of us, right? And we need to be focused on what's coming ahead, not only what's happened in the past. So I think it's important that we have a proactive approach to make sure that we're not only building at a net zero, which is the new plan, right? We build something and there has to be a net zero change on how much water is coming down the slope or affecting the building area. Again, not an engineer or a planner. But there is some criticality to that. I also think, and this comes back to the leadership question, when we are wrong, it's okay to say it. And sometimes we need to hold a forum and let people tell us we're wrong. And we need to sit and listen, as hard as that is. Because I think there's lots of folks, and again, I live on West Main, but I live up on a hill. I'm very fortunate. The hardest thing I have to make sometimes is, do I stop the car or keep going?
Thank you very much, Brent. Next question. What do you see as the greatest strength of Kentville's current state or recent accomplishments, and how would you build on these to foster growth and opportunity for the community? Let's start with Andrew.
Thank you. So I think right now, I'm probably our greatest thing right now, and I know people may not agree with this yet. It will when it's done. I'm really happy to see the development on Park Street. Bryson's going to put a development there, and I know new is not, people aren't always excited about change, but that's going to give a whole different type of housing that Kentville's been missing for forever. I hate to see people leave Kentville, and there comes a point when people get older and they want to downsize and they still want to have a home, a smaller home, but they want to have their independence. So we haven't had that type of housing. And I know Mitch Bryson will put that there, just as he's done in Windsor with the crossing there, and he'll have Kentville crossing here. I mean, that it'll come eventually. I just think that's an exciting piece that council's worked on. And again, it'll be a brand new development at the other end of town. Another thing that I'm quite proud of is their active transportation route. Our sidewalks downtown look great, and that's going to continue. There's more of those coming as we move on to the next stage. And again, I'm just really happy to see Kentville full downtown. And I mean, people complain that there's not enough there, but when I came here 12 years ago, I mean, you could shoot a bowling ball down the street. So when I see businesses there come and they're thriving and they're staying, It's a great thing. So to anybody who's looking to open a business in Kentville, I always encourage you. You will be glad you came. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Brent, what are your thoughts?
I think the real strength of Kentville are the residents. That's what I'm getting when I'm wandering around. There are so many people that have made a significant commitment to not only choose Kentville when they first moved here, but choose it every year they choose to stay here and not sell their house. And I know there are some folks that are in a place where it might be a little challenging, and I know there are some people leaving our community. But I'm a big believer in choosing hope, and I think there's a lot of hope in our community. I think residents are proud of the town we live in. They're aspirational of what we can see, and yeah, there are people that are angry. But you got to have passion to be angry. If you don't care about something, chances are you're just going to be, apoplectic about it. You're not going to care. So I think that that's so important, and that's why when I tell people, like, citizens are at the heart of every decision. That's municipal government, in my opinion. And so if we can find a way to foster those citizens and give them a place where they feel heard, the rest will come. Paula mentioned it before, build it and they'll come. I'm not quite sure this is field of dreams, but I'm pretty sure that if we listen, we've got lots of smart folks here. We have lots of people that are committed to our community, and we have a lot of history here. And I think we can use that history and learn from the past and build a pretty solid future.
Thank you, Brent. Paula, your response?
Thank you. I think the first thing I want to acknowledge tonight is, we're talking about Kentville and how long we've been around, but Kentville was formed by many, many people who were mayors and councillors way before me. And you really led the path and the way to your vision of what you saw Kentville to be. So I'm just going to say, I was glad I put my name in the hat 4 years ago to be a part of that. Some of the work as councillors that we walked into for the first 4 years, I remember saying to Councillor Maxwell, as she bragged about the active transportation plan, I went, oh, I wish I was on that when you were on it. I was so excited because nobody else was talking about it. And I was like, Kentville is rocking it. I was so excited. Now that I've been counselor, now I'm seeing it's not just the active transportation, which I'm proud of. It's about all the small business growth and all the relationships that we have built. And I'm going to tell you, walking around canvassing, the love that the residents have for Kentville, I'm going to tell you, it's alive and well. They just want to see some new activity. And one example that I will finish off my story with is, yes, I'm proud of everything, but one of the things was, when we had the Canada Cup Championships, nobody knew about it. Why is that? We don't brag enough about what we have and what we do. Why is that? I'm like, oh, that's a good question. So moving forward, that would be one of the things that I want to do. I'm a boat bragger. I'm proud to be from Kentville. I'm originally from Newfoundland, but I'm proud to live here now. And I think we should brag about who lives here and what we do and where we're moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. We got one last question here. Probably comes from a younger demographic. How will you, as mayor, use social media appropriately without bias to get information to the town?
That's a loaded question.
Let's
Thanks.
start with Brent.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I talked about this before. I'm not a big Facebook person. It's not really my thing. But again, we have to find a way to be accessible. So I've taken the plunge and hopped back on Facebook, and most of the time I'm okay with it. I start at 4 a.m. So if you get a message from me, you're getting answered at 4 a.m, just full disclosure. But there's a lot more in social media than just Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat. And, there's Reddit, there's Discourse, there's lots of other ways that people can come out and reach. And I do think that it's important that we go to where the people are. I'm not suggesting we need to be there all the time, but I am saying that when we are there, that we take the high road. We don't engage in conversations that just bring up hate and anger, because nobody wins there. And you know what? Life's pretty scary. We've gone through a lot in the last number of years. It's easy to hide behind a keyboard, but I do like to tell people, if you're upset with me online, like, you can call me. I'll pick up the phone. I'm okay with that. If you want to sit down and tell me you're upset, no problem. I got big shoulders. I can take it. But when we start hurting people for no particular reason, then we start ostracizing people from the conversation and we start scaring people before it even starts. And again, if we start acting in a place of scarcity, we're never going to have what we need. And I really do think it is as simple as that. We choose to take the high road. We choose to be happy. And that we can be happy in unfortunate and hard conversations, because sometimes we just need to agree to not agree. And that's okay.
Thank you, Brent. Paula, your thoughts?
There's a lot that Brent said that I would just say ditto. You know, I love social media. I learn so much from it. I love to contribute to it. And I love to see what people are thinking. But when it comes to insults, I have no time for it. We, as Kentville, are better than that. People that chime in on social media, they want to know what we're doing. Not hatred-wise, growth-wise. And how did you get there? Who's involved? Wow. Who lives there? Look what they're doing for the children. They want to know what we're doing. And we want to hear your contribution to it. But we need to keep out of the lane of insulting each other, because what happens on social media, when someone becomes a councillor or a mayor, they don't sign up their own names, they sign up their family, and they sign up their children who go to school. So before anybody does anything on social media and answers something quickly, we want them to stop and think about it for a couple of minutes. Who am I hurting today? That's not what this is about. The question should be, who are we helping today? Social media is a great venue. It can save you a lot of marketing dollars. You can really learn a lot from other partners. And it's not just Facebook. It's Instagram, LinkedIn especially. That's where the business people are hanging out, right? There's where you want to be, right? They're listening to you. What can we learn from that business? Oh, you want to come here and guest speak? Let's go. Just give us what you got, because we're here to take it. But social media is for everybody to be kind. That's what it is.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew?
Thank you. Facebook for me now, I run a business, so I use it to its full potential. So people, when they come in the store, they know everything I have, they know what I'm doing, they know what I had for lunch, and you build relationships with people. So it's a great tool for that. The town uses it as well, I think in a very positive way. They post stuff there and, you know, events that are going on in town. And like Saturday, we had the Oktoberfest, and great videos were on there, and you can kind of see what's going on, and it makes you interested, makes you want to go there. There is a lot of negativity there too, and I always have said in my 4 years since I've been on council, you can debate the issue, but don't debate the person. And I often see those comments. I don't monitor my page all the time, so if I see one, I like to have it removed. Sometimes they're about me, sometimes they're about other people. And it's unfortunate that people can't stay on the topic and they have to attack the person rather than whatever their issue is. So there is a little bit of that, but I think for the most part, though, it's a great tool to use. I think the town will just keep building on using it for positive, and I'll have my breakfast on there in the morning so you can see what I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And that's all the time we have for the questions. So we're going to wrap this up with closing statements from each candidate, 3 minutes each. We will follow a reverse order to the opening statements, starting with Brent.
Thanks. So, once again, thanks to the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors for giving us the opportunity to have this conversation. I've had the great pleasure of walking around our neighborhoods and trying to meet people, and sometimes it's tricky for people to open the door. So, oh yeah, and also to all you guys online, guys and girls that are watching this, because the last time I went out, I went to 100 houses and I talked to 9 people. Which is fine. I'm very good at doing this or pressing the Ring doorbell. And if any of you have received a funny Ring doorbell message from me, you're welcome. I try to keep it under 15 seconds. But the reality is that I love this town. My wife and I chose this to make our home. It's a place that I've lived longer than anywhere else in my life. I've been fairly nomadic. I've held lots of different jobs in different places. I've got the professional skills to do this. I really do. I have the ability to work with people and to build a team. I feel, and I hope that you're able to see that tonight, that I also have the ability to be here in front of you in a professional manner that talks about the issues, but also can make you laugh, because sometimes that's important. I'm committed to making sure our community grows and that people are heard, that we make time and we make space to hear from people, and that we find a way to hold ourselves accountable. With your support, I'm going to bring my dedication, integrity, and a fresh perspective. I'm the only non-incumbent here. I haven't sat around the horseshoe, and yes, that means I'm a bit of a wild card, but I am your fresh choice because I haven't been there before. And I think we can build on a wonderful future for all of Kentville, because with your voice and our vision, vote Brent.
Thank you, Ren. Andrew?
Thank you. So obviously, I'm looking for your support tonight. I've done a lot of door-to-door in the last couple of weeks, and I got to tell you, it's a struggle because when I go to the door, I never know who lives there, but everybody knows me. I've dressed you or clothed you or sold you underwear, and I get invited in, and then I have to sit down and have a coffee, and instead of doing 50 houses in 3 hours, I've done 7 because I've taken after my father, and I'll just talk and talk and talk. I feel, after the last 4 years, and it hasn't necessarily been the easiest term. I don't think that's a secret. But I was never bothered by people. People would come in the store all the time. I have a pothole or I have an issue. People would say, "Don't you get tired of that?" And I said, "No, I don't mind. I love that part. I love to engage with the citizens. I'd rather do that sometimes than sit around that horseshoe." Because that's what I'm always available. My door's always open, ready to handle anything and try to find a solution to it. I think I've shown that in the last 4 years. I've always been available. I've always spoken my mind. I always speak up. And that's what I'm going to continue to do for everybody. Always tell the truth. I'm very transparent. I think there's very little that the public shouldn't have to know. Yeah, we have a couple things that we should kind of keep in camera, but some of them you don't even have to. That's kind of optional. And I think the more you provide to the public, the less questions you're going to have. You're going to trust your council. And that's really what the starting point is, to rebuild the trust with the citizens of this town and the council, because I think that's been another problem for the last several years. So I'm ready to take on the reins with the new council and lead us forward and get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Paula for the wrap-up.
How do I follow all that? Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Raj, for being our moderator tonight, and for those running for mayor and town council, and for those standing up for our community. I want to thank the Chamber for holding the forum, and for the audience who are participating here, and those of you at home who are watching online. We appreciate you giving us your time. We're at a critical time for the town of Kentville, where we need someone with experience and a commitment to the community, who builds relationships, collaborates, and connects to bring us together. For 20 years, I have seen the changes in our town. When I walk the town and talk to folks here, I understand we need to communicate more fully. I understand we need to bring concise information to people, and we need to create a communication stream to meet people where they're at. Our town is vibrant and inclusive, and into the future, we need to continue to meet our needs. People tell me Kentville is a fun place to live and work. I witnessed this on the drive over here. How fun it is to see the Great Pumpkin people, showing us we're in one of the most enjoyable seasons in the year. Folks in other towns are excited to visit and see new businesses and restaurants opening. Our main street is getting noticed, and it's changing and growing, and we need to continue to support and promote and inspire to bring opportunities to those who see firsthand the changes as well as what the growing is taking place. Today you heard from the mayoral candidates, and there's a lot to think about. But consider this. I am the person running for mayor who is a connector. I bring us together to ensure that the town meets its potential into the future. I bring a career of community activism and service, and I have met with people across sectors to engage, learn, and see what we can and what we need to do to go forward. Voting for me as your mayor ensures a new way forward, as well as someone ready to roll up their sleeves, So let's get to work and let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. So I'd like to thank the candidates for a healthy and thoughtful debate tonight. I also want to thank each and every one of you, those who are present here, as well as those who are online. And I would like to wish all of you a good night. Thank you for coming.